Hi, everyone. Just getting my Instagram started, and then we'll be ready to start Crushing Doubt's Q&A. Give me 1 second, and we will get started. I wish this were a little more seamless. They need to work on the technology about this. Here we are. Okay, guys. Hello, and welcome to Crushing Doubt's Q&A. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I try to be here every week. There are times where I'm off, but usually not. Very excited to be here, as always, to talk about all kinds of things mind body to get you guys the answers that you need. And there are many reasons that I do this Q&A, but among them, let's start really at the beginning, is that I suppose everyone is a mind body sufferer. It is the human condition, but I suffered from 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had, not surprisingly, based on what I'm describing. But I think that people who have not suffered pain, and sometimes even people who have suffered pain, assume that it means something different than what it was. It was incredibly hard. And the thing that I found that I needed to get better was the right information. But I didn't know that the information was even out there. Like many of you, I hadn't discovered Dr. John Sarno at one point. And so I didn't have the basic information. And then even when I did get the information from reading Dr. Sarno, I still had lots and lots of questions. So the reason I do this Q&A is to talk about these issues and make sure that people can get the answers they need to the very important questions. Why is that? It is because we're here to talk about mind-body symptoms. Think about what the words mean. Mind-body. It's not one or the other. They're really one unit together. But the fact is, and I even like the order of it. The mind is where things begin. It's not in your head. It is from your head, and then it becomes very real in the body. If the thinking stays the same, then our symptoms stay the same. And if we don't learn how to manage our mind's processes, we don't get control of the symptoms. I'm here to help you get control of seemingly chronic symptoms, to expose them as not chronic. And I'm also here to show you how to get acute symptoms under control. We're going to talk about it all through my system. This is called the column system, which derives its name from when I first started working with people after discovering Sarno and getting better. I found that it was helpful to think about these symptoms in terms of three main areas of mental life. One, emotions; another, thinking; and another, the relationship with yourself or feelings about the self. So these get divided into three areas. And what I would do is have people divide a sheet of paper into, you guessed it, 3 columns. These are called the emotions, doubt, and power columns. The emotions column is for the feeling part, and it's for acute onsets and upticks. The doubt column is for seemingly chronic symptoms, and that's for your thinking and how we need to change that. And then the power column is about your relationship with yourself and how we can adjust that to get rid of what I call symptom plateaus, where you get better, you get out of doubt, you bring down the seemingly chronic symptoms, you start to control acute symptoms, but you stay at a certain hovering level, a plateau. That's usually because of the relationship with the self. So we're going to get into talking about this all. Let me say hi to a couple of people, then we'll get into some questions. Sarah Kelly Burke, thanks for joining us here. Shelby Geyer, good to see you. Kari Renee Stubblefield, thank you for joining us here. Melissa Ramsey. Sorry, I may be mispronouncing names, but thank you for joining us here. Jamie, thank you for joining us here. Jamie says, hi, Dan and Crushing Doubt community. Great to see you here, Jamie. Cookie Nat, thank you for joining us. I see some questions on Instagram as well, but still a couple of hellos I want to say. Dorisa, thanks for saying hi to everybody and to me. Good to see you. Kasim, good to see you. Hello, good to see you. I see, Kasim, you got it. You corrected yourself on that name. Good catch. But either way, I'm just happy to see you here. Okay, Beatrice, thank you for saying hi to me and everybody. And Susan, good to see you. And thank you for these kind wishes. Now, we've got a bunch of questions coming in, and I'm going to answer them shortly. But I want to say a couple things first. One is I already talked about how I have this system. And I've already talked about that we're here to answer mind-body questions. You're here to ask any questions that you have. I'm here to provide the answers. And if I don't answer them to your full satisfaction, what I want you to do is ask the follow-up questions. Don't be shy. There's no bad questions. Ultimately, we need to change the thinking. And if we're going to change the thinking, we need to access what you're thinking. And then I need to provide new information. And so keep pushing for that. Okay? Because if we change what's going on up here, we can change what's going on all throughout the body. I like to think of my body as one giant brain. Now, with respect to the system, I mentioned these different columns. They're going to organize how we interpret these symptoms and how we understand them. And if we can take away whatever the function of those symptoms are in the moment, then we can get control of them. In the emotions column, that function is distraction. There's an unconscious emotion we don't want to know about, and suddenly a symptom pops up. That's why it's an acute onset or uptick. And if we make that emotion conscious, that symptom function is gone. It's not needed anymore, and the symptom can go. In the doubt column, the symptom function is protection. It's like a helicopter parent that thinks we're always in danger. If we can convince doubt that we're actually safe, then it goes away, and the seemingly chronic symptoms start to break up and move around and change, and then eventually go away. And in the power column, the symptom function is communication. We need to understand what this symptom is telling us about our own story. And once we receive that communication, we can break through plateaus and get rid of that kind of symptom. So these columns are very helpful in organizing what's going on in each situation. I'm going to get into that. At some point in this show, I'm going to talk about my website and the different resources available to you. But I also want to mention I can't believe this, actually. It blows my mind, and I'm very excited about it. We are 2 weeks away from the book launch. And so next week I'll be doing a Q&A, and that'll be exciting as always. But 2 weeks from today, I won't be doing a Q&A per se. It will be a Q&A. There, you will be able to ask questions, and I will provide some answers, but it's going to be primarily about the book. So I want you guys to put this on your radar, everybody who's listening now. In 2 weeks, I want to be back here at the same time together. And not only that, but I would love it if you would spread the word and get as many of your friends or whoever to come, because the more people who are at this event, the better, for multiple reasons. But one is that it gets attention. When people see that people are interested in this stuff, it gets attention. Eventually, it'll get attention worldwide because people are starting to catch on. This is a big deal. And what we can do at the book launch in 2 weeks is to drive everybody to buy it on Amazon. Obviously, I'd love to sell the books, but for multiple reasons. And the primary reasons are I want that information in as many hands as possible. And I also want it to get attention, not because I want attention, but because I want this issue to get attention. And the more we sell on that first day, the more likely it becomes an Amazon bestseller, catches notice, and keeps on going from there. So please join me and bring as many people as you can to that event. And I'll be sending out my newsletter tomorrow. If you don't belong to my newsletter, please consider joining that as well. That's on my website, www.crushingdoubt.com. Okay, let's get to some questions. Then we'll get to the website, and I'll do some follow-up on book stuff. And if people have questions about the book, please do let me know. A couple more hellos. Darlene, good to see you here. It's been a while, my friend. Good to see you here. Amir, thank you for joining us here as well. Catherine Toomer, good to see you. Darlene, thanks for saying hi. Oh, Amir, you said hi too. Also, good to see you, my friend. Nurse B, thank you for joining us. And Kathy O'Leary, thank you for joining us as well. I think I got all the hellos. Now, let's jump in with some comments. Okay, Russell Crane's music. Good to see you here, Russell. Although I see the first two words are still struggling, so I'm sorry about that. But the good news is we can dismantle these symptoms. So let's dive in. Still struggling with the push-up doubt trigger. Russell was he was having certain symptoms, and we were talking about pushing through them. Sarno talked about resuming normal physical activity. That's one way of looking at this, but getting through a doubt trigger can be an important way to move forward. What is a doubt trigger? A doubt trigger is when you are expecting there to be a problem with a certain movement or position, and you need to help your brain get convinced that it's actually safe to bring down that protection function and doubt and move forward. So Russell was doing push-ups to show himself that he's safe. Now, he says, sometimes I do them and I'm fine. Other times I question my form, if I'm breathing properly, if I'm moving too slowly. That's when I get symptoms. Then he asks, how can I successfully convince my brain that this movement, and all movements, can't cause damage? All right. Now, Russell, what you just said it's going to be incredibly helpful to a lot of people, but I'm going to show you why. Let's look at what you just actually said to yourself, because when we're in doubt, we forget to really think about logical inconsistencies, and we can't see things clearly. Doubt gets us confused, or it gets us afraid. Let's read what you wrote. Sometimes I do them and I'm fine. Other times I question my form, if I'm breathing properly, if I'm moving too slowly. That's when I get symptoms. So there are two opposing theories here. One is this is a mind-body issue, and I should be able to conquer this and break through. Another is, okay, maybe this is about form or breathing, or if I'm moving too slowly, or some physical process. And that's when there could be a problem. But you're noting everything you need to know that this is a mind-body issue and nothing else. First of all, sometimes I do them and I'm fine. If it really were a form question, it probably wouldn't go so well. Wouldn't go as well as it does some of the time. And not only that, it would be really consistent in terms of the form. On top of it, we're not as vulnerable creatures as this makes us sound. From an evolutionary standpoint, it only makes sense that we can handle much more than this. But the fact that it's sometimes totally fine, that screams mind body. Right? Now, I know you doubters out there, you'll hear what I just said and say, but mine never goes. So that means it's not mind body. Nope. There's just a different presentation. Russell's doubt is low enough that it's not going to be consistent and chronic. He's got it happening when there's a doubt trigger, when there's fear involved. Now, fear is the emotional form of doubt, but notice it's the emotional form of doubt. So there's an onset or an uptick essentially happening because of the doubt you're having, Russell. So what I want you to think about is the logical inconsistency of the fact that every single time you have a worried thought, that's when you get the symptoms. That's another telltale sign. So when you ask this question, how can I successfully convince my brain that this movement and all movements can't cause damage? The key way we can do it is to always link what's going on in the mind with what's going on in the body. The more we see that connection, the more convinced we become of that connection, the less we can possibly believe that it's about something physical, the form, the way we're breathing, whether we're moving fast enough, whether it's movement, whether it's positional. And Russell, here's another thing that I can tell you, but ultimately it doesn't matter what I believe. It only matters what you believe. So if these arguments don't work, we move on to find another one. But here's another one you can think about. If we look at all of the success stories that people have had with chronic pain versus the things that haven't worked, almost all of the success stories come from mind-body treatment or from a placebo belief in a treatment. But it always comes from belief. And I'm not saying blind belief. I'm saying with science and logic. So, Russell, I've started you out with a couple of, I think, quite cogent arguments against these doubts, which is what you're asking for. How can I successfully convince my brain that there isn't damage from this stuff and that it is mind-body? Well, I just gave you some reasons, but here's the thing. In the work that I do as I try to bring down doubt, it does not matter what I think, it matters what you think. So I need your response to that. I need to see where that goes. Sometimes you guys are simply going to need strong reassurance. Sarno's complete confidence was a major part of why I got better. And it's not false confidence either. It was confidence driven by science and logic. And the logic in some ways was the biggest key, though the science is a prerequisite. The logic was the thing that made me see, I get why he's this confident. And then I wasn't just banking on a really confident guy. I was banking on a really confident guy who was making sense. So Russell, my question to you is, did this make enough sense for you to be able to put that to rest? Here's another thing to hold on to, Russell, also. This is a very big emotional time for you. You're more likely to have more flare-ups during that time, both in the emotions column, but you're even likely to have higher doubt at such times. Everything is pointing in the direction of exactly what I explain happens in these mind-body situations. So the fact that you are having symptoms that behave just like it, and the fact that you've actually gotten rid of symptoms this way before should tell us this is mind-body again. This is just doubt messing with you. Okay? Let's see where that goes from here, okay? Thanks for the question, Russell. All right. Low essential. Oh, wow, that's a mouthful. Well, thank you for joining us here. Low essential es l'essentia. I will try to say that. Cohen Tammy, thank you for joining us here as well. All right. Shelby Geyer. And by the way, if I miss a question, do let me know. I never mean to skip over anybody. Okay. Shelby Geyer says, how to keep moving with crazy symptoms and to not buy into doubt and fear. and how to stop a repetitive, horrible thought. You invite what it is. Sorry, she meant you know what mine is. Right. So I do know what yours is. And Shelby, if you want me to mention it for context, I certainly will. But I'm going to leave it alone because I want you to feel permission with that. But let me answer this first question: how to keep moving with crazy symptoms and to not buy into doubt and fear. So Shelby, here, my thinking about this is, for me, it was hard to not have doubt and fear until things made sense. As soon as things made sense, and they made sense in a way that told me I was going to get better and even how I was going to get better, then I stopped being so afraid. So what I hear in your question is that, and I don't mean this critically, I mean it supportively and even encouragingly. I hear that you don't yet feel you understand this well enough. And again, not critical at all. This is very typical for many people. But it could be seen as encouraging, because if I'm saying to you, listen, Shelby, the reason that you still have all that doubt and fear is that you're not quite sure how to understand all of this, right? So that's the answer to your first question: how to keep moving with these crazy symptoms. It's pretty hard to do these things unless you feel like you understand why it's safe. To bring doubt down, you got to convince it you don't need protection. But if you are terrified, it's going to think, well, I do need protection, right? I'm not saying it critically. I get it. But it is going to be science and logic and rational discussion that's going to change how you're thinking about this. And where are you going to get it from? From new information. So you and I are having an ongoing conversation. And this is the way I think about treating everybody here. These are ongoing conversations that we're having together, me and you, but together as a group as well, about why things can make sense. And when that happens, things will come down. Now, your next question: and how to stop a repetitive, horrible thought. You know what mine is, so I do know what yours is. But Shelby, I was saying this to you in a conversation we were having on the side. The way to stop these repetitive, horrible thoughts is to understand why they're there at a given time. And I'm going to call it an obsessional thought, just as a way to represent it. It's not, there's no judgment in it, but it's just happening again and again. You can't get your mind off of it. That is a symptom also. Almost everything that you ever experience is a symptom. Depression is a symptom. Anxiety is a symptom. Obsessions are a symptom. Worries are a symptom. And through the column system, I can explain why did that symptom come up when it did. So you're having this repetitive thought and you're just like, make it stop, make it stop. How do I make it stop? And I get that. Totally natural that you would think that. What I want you to think instead is, why is it here? What is this telling me? Because that will stop it. So I'm not telling you don't think to stop it. The goal is to stop it. But to stop any of these symptoms requires full understanding of what it is. And I guarantee you, this didn't just come out of nowhere. This came from some kind of experience you had where either doubt was raised or a big emotion came in and you needed that covered over with a symptom, or there was a power dip. One of those three. There's only 3 columns, and they all describe why you can have symptoms. So you say how to stop a repetitive, horrible thought. One of the problems you're running into, Shelby, is you engage with the thought. You think that it's, you got to debate with it. But obviously, you would win that debate and move on if you could. What needs to happen instead is you got to think about, why am I having it now? There's an onset of a symptom. And that is an emotions column. So we've got to look at, what might you have been feeling? I want you to go back to the first moment where you noticed, I really started having this thought again. And I wasn't having it as much before, which, by the way, you weren't. I've been talking to you. You don't have this all the time, at least not to this degree. So we have to figure out what's happening with this. What does it mean? Okay. Okay. Shelby says, I don't care if you mention it. Okay. Thanks. So she can worry that she has MS because her symptoms tend to match up with that. But you got to remember, diagnoses were created around collections of symptoms. It's not the other way around. It's not, oh my God, there's this horrible thing, MS, going on, and it floats around and lands on some of us, and then we have those symptoms. Quite the opposite. We have all these symptoms, then the doctors try to explain it, and they end up saying, oh, that's MS. Now, I'm not saying there's never cases of MS, because there are times where unprocessed emotional trauma can head in that direction. But Shelby, you've already been cleared of this multiple times. Medical doctors are saying you don't have that. And by the way, most people who have that diagnosis still don't have it. They instead have a collection of symptoms that are going in that direction. Shelby also asked, eye pain, flashes, blurriness, all TMS. TMS is what Sarno called mind-body experience tension myositis or tension myoneural syndrome. There's many names for it. The way I think about it is, if the body can make the symptom happen or have the symptom, then the mind can use it. If the body can do it, the mind can use it. So yes, eye pain, 100%. Flashes in the eyes, yes. Blurriness, all mind body. Now, can it be caused by other things? Sure. You get something in your eye, that can cause blurriness. But generally speaking, anything that's lasting in these ways and not connected to a very clear medical condition, it's mind body. And the vast majority of all symptoms are mind body. And I'm talking over 99.999% at least of all symptoms that you've ever had. So there's a lot to talk about in this. LJP Wright, thanks for joining us here. And Jojo Relaxing, thank you for joining us as well. Okay, I'm going to jump back to some YouTube questions, and then I'll be back with the Instagram people soon. Hello, good to see you. Sometimes I feel physical discomfort or pain, but I can't pinpoint where it is in my body. Do you have any idea what kind of doubt this might be? It's really confusing for me. It feels like level 2. We're going to talk about the levels in a second. Maybe even level 3, but it's really confusing. And I don't know what work to do with it. This makes me feel much weaker in the face of these symptoms compared to regular level 1. So, okay, for those of you who don't know, let's talk about these levels of doubt. This is another set of terms that I created to understand my own symptoms and other people's. And that is that we can have doubts about many things. Level 1 doubt is doubt about whether your symptoms are mind body or not. What we were just talking about with Shelby is an example of it. Is it MS or is it mind body? She's not entirely settled on that. So that's level 1 doubt. That's the base level doubt. And we got to work on that. But once that's gone, you can recognize there's level 2 doubt. By the way, level 2 doubt could be there with level 1 doubt. But level 2 doubt is, I do believe it's mind body, especially if it's you largely believe that. And then you could start to think, but even if it's mind body, is my symptom or are my symptoms harder to manage than others? Now, Hillel, so far what you're saying feels like a level 2 doubt, because you're saying, I can't pinpoint where this is in my body, and that's going to make it harder to conquer. That's a level 2 doubt right there, right? By the way, you can have all 3 levels of doubt at once. Level 3 doubt is, I know it's mind body. I know my symptom is not any different than other mind body symptoms. I should be able to make it go away. But is there something about me that's going to stand in the way of getting better? That's doubt about the self. Okay? So now that I've explained those levels, let's go back through Hillel's question. Sometimes I feel physical discomfort or pain, but I can't pinpoint where it is in my body. I hear that level 2 bubbling to the surface. He said, this is different. Do you have any idea of what kind of doubt this might be? I would say level 2. And then you said it's really confusing for me. It feels like level 2. Bingo, you're right. Maybe even level 3. There is some of that. Can I figure this out? Is this going to make sense to me? But it's really confusing, and I don't know what work to do with it. This makes me feel much weaker in the face of these symptoms compared to regular level 1. So Hillel, this is for Hillel and it's for everyone. This is part of how doubt works. It wants to scare you about everything all the time, and it's always looking for ground it can gain. So it's looking at these different levels and it's saying, oh, you can't pinpoint where this is. So now, not only am I going to give you level 1 doubt, I'm going to try to expand. I'm going to try to get you thinking, oh, I got level 2 doubt too. I don't know. Maybe this is harder. Maybe my situation is more complex. Well, that's one of the reasons I don't endorse that idea that there's anything more complex about how things are going for you. Nobody really is more or less complex. They might have different presentations of these symptoms, but if I can describe them all, nobody's that complex. You all get a columns diagnosis. I can describe what's happening for you within the columns. And Hillel, for you overall, one way to think about it is, don't worry about the levels. Doubt it's so crafty. And listen, doubt is as smart as you are. And Hillel, you're really, really smart. So here it comes. It's trying to say, oh no, these other levels of doubt are going to be harder to conquer than others. Guess what? Bullshit. That's just doubt messing with you. All doubts are the same. They're all false. We attack them all. If you weaken one, you weaken them all. So this level 2 doubt, that'll all start to crumble a lot when you get rid of level 1 doubt. I wouldn't even worry about that. I would say to myself, yeah, doubt. Here we go. Here you're making another argument. It's a crafty argument, but I'm not going to believe you about anything. And I'm going to go conquer one doubt at a time until you are crumbling. That's what I would say in terms of the work to do. You don't have to do different work with it. What you have to do is put up a wall against doubt in general. Stop messing with me, doubt. I recognize you every time. If you're doing that generally, you don't have to fight every doubt battle. You can fight a couple, and it'll carry through those victories to the rest of your work. Hello, let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay, Kasim, good to see you here. Kasim says, I'm having issues lowering PCS still. Okay, so PCS is post-concussion syndrome. And Kasim, I think you will agree with this, but I'm going to say it anyway for everybody. I don't believe you have post-concussion syndrome. I mean that as encouraging information, and you know that. And I think even you, at least on good days, totally believe that. But that's been the thing that you've been worried about. That's a diagnosis that you were given by at least one doctor, I think. And so you said, I'm having issues lowering the symptoms. They're mind-body symptoms that feel related to post-concussion situation, syndrome, and disorders I never gravitate towards. And not that it's a problem for you to use it, but I want you to think about the language that you bring to yourself because it can feed doubt. Now, Kasim says, the only way the symptoms disappear is if I have another doubt trigger, like a back flare-up or foot pain or IBS. But as soon as I beat PCS when I was driving through a snowstorm, PCS vanished. This happened twice. Is this now a learned trigger reaction? Tried going around doubt with power and emotions, no change. Any ideas? Oh, hold on. Sorry, that should read, as soon as I beat the other flare-ups, the PCS comes right back. Okay, so here's what I'll say to that, Kasim. Well, actually, let me leave this up just so we have a reference point. The way I think about certain symptoms is that we have certain initial symptoms, or maybe certain very strong symptoms, or ones that cause a lot of fear. Those are the ones that tend to come back most easily. Why is that? Because doubt has the easiest time weaseling its way in. So, and remember, especially when it's fear-based, fear is the emotional form of doubt. So when fear comes in, you're having a doubt, but you're also having an emotion, fear. It's both. And so there is an onset or an uptick that comes roaring in there right at the beginning. And at the same time, doubt goes up. One thing you guys will get a lot out of to think about when it comes to the columns is that the columns have an interaction with each other. When doubt goes up, power goes down. When doubt goes up, the emotions column can often get more activated. When the emotions column is all riled up, doubt can suddenly go up and power can go down. They all interact with each other because they're all in you. And so what I'm seeing here is you get rid of certain symptoms and doubt says, well, guess what, Kasim? I got an ace up my sleeve every time. And it's that PCS stuff. And you'll never get rid of me. And the reality is, the only reason the symptom is stronger, and I don't mean this dismissively, I mean it encouragingly, the only reason the symptom is stronger is that your fear about that symptom is stronger. However, you have a lot of science and logic pointing in the direction that you don't actually have post-concussion syndrome. You've had symptoms pop up when you actually lightly hit your head. Again, not saying it dismissively, I'm saying it encouragingly. And even if you really smacked your head pretty hard, that's not where post-concussion syndrome comes from. As you know, it comes from like being a football player getting hit like by a freight train linebacker over and over and over, or just massive collision after massive collision. And that does not happen. That's not what has happened to you. What's happened instead is you got really, really scared by the diagnosis, by the onset, When fear is baked into the symptom, it's more likely to come right back. However, I know what doubt's going to do with this. It's going to say, oh, well, if it's more likely to come back, then I can't get rid of it, even if it is mind body. Well, that is another form of doubt. It's trying to find its way in however it can. And our job over time is to push back against doubt so often and so much and with such consistency that eventually we don't buy it and we're not scared by it. One of the reasons I'm able to do the work that I'm able to do and why I find my doubt work can be important to so many people is I've conquered my own doubts so many times that I see doubt happening all the time, and I rarely ever believe my own doubt. And I never believe other people's doubt. Not ever. Occasionally, my own doubt can weasel its way in there. But I always remember. In fact, I've even trained my mother to say back some of the things to me that I often say because it reminds me of what I'm going to say. But it feels better coming from the outside. So sometimes you're just going to need reassurance. And there are other times also, Kasim, where, like I said to Shelby, these symptoms don't just come back every time. That's actually doubt saying a bullshit argument. It's not true. It doesn't always come back. It does come back more often when you're more upset. So we've got to start tracking the meaning of the symptoms and seeing they really do lay out in the way that fits with the whole system. Okay, Kasim, let me know if that made sense to you. And listen, my hope is always that everything that I say is going to be helpful, but you've got your own mind. And however something lands, you got to let me know because we got to keep working at it. If that didn't work enough for you, then follow up. Okay? Russell Crane's music has a follow-up. Thanks, Dan. The symptom is shifting in the course of the Q&A. Well, that's a surefire sign of mind-body experience. I have a tremendous amount going on in life, and I think these presentations are emotional onsets. Yes, when you are having a lot going on, you're going to have more onsets and upticks of symptoms. You're going to have higher doubt. You're going to have lower power at times. But these columns give you 3 different ways to work against those symptoms. All right, now look what just happened. Russell came to me. He posed these things. He asked about it. And one thing I love about what Russell did, and I encourage you all to do, is we have to ask the questions, but we also have to be open to the hope that can come in. And it's not just like made up hope. It comes from science and logic. So he came in open. He was like, give me the good stuff. Give me the reassurance. Tell me why this is mind body. And I did. And the symptom is shifting in the course of this Q&A. If the symptoms ever shift, that's a surefire sign that it's mind body. If they don't shift and there's doubt there, that still means it's likely to be mind body, but doubt explains why it didn't shift. When doubt's down low enough, as it often is for you, Russell, we can get results like this again and again and again. And that makes us stronger and stronger and more able to do this. And back to you, Kasim, you've actually managed and mastered a lot of symptoms in different moments. There are times, though, where doubt makes you forget to use those successes against the current moment. And I have a line that I sometimes say where I say to people, what is the worst symptom you could possibly have? And I get a variety of answers. But the answer is actually today's symptom. Doesn't matter what symptom it is. It's the one today that scares us. It's not the one we're not having now. It's the one we are having now. Always. Let's keep working at this, though, guys. You're doing great. Okay, let me make sure that I didn't skip anybody. Okay, Sarah Kelly Burke, me again. Can I ask, once you know your limiting beliefs, i.e. bad things always happen to me, etc., what is your method for changing that mindset? What's the process? Okay, great question, Sarah. So this is what I call a level 3 doubt. Remember, level 1 doubts are about, is it mind body or not? Level 2 doubts is my mind body symptom harder to conquer than others? And level 3 doubts are doubts about the self. To say these limiting beliefs, bad things always happen to me, is really actually a self-doubt. I'm not saying it critically. I'm saying that encouragingly because we're identifying something. But now we get to what's my method for changing that mindset. Level 1 and level 2 doubts can be conquered with science and logic. Level 3 doubts about the self, there's no science to that. And the logic is all internal logic. But there is a place where you can conquer level 3 doubt, and it is in the power column. So my method for changing that mindset. is to go over to the power column and start exploring the relationship with the self. You don't just think out of nowhere bad things always happen to you. The reason you think bad things always happen to you, Sarah, is because they have happened to you. You have trauma, like many, many people do, like I do, and so many others. Negative belief systems come from things that happened to us, how we interpreted them, and the fear that they're going to happen again. But in the power column, this is probably what would be most surprising to you about this, Sarah, and everybody else who's listening to this particular part of the show today or tonight, is the idea that actually you can change your relationship with yourself. You can change what you expect. And a lot of people think, what? How could I change what to expect? Don't I have the same past that I always had? Wouldn't I just expect the same thing? Not if you have a new understanding of that past. Because once you have a new understanding of you, that's where logic about the self can come in. Aha. No, I'm feeling bad because of the things that happened to me, not because of the things that are going to happen to me are going to be the same. They're not. We can really change what we come to expect. And I'll tell you this, Sarah, one of the main ways that we change what we can expect, especially about, thinking bad things are going to happen to us and that kind of thing, is if we learn to really like ourselves, we stop thinking that we're going to have bad things happen to us. A lot of it comes down to that we were taught not to like ourselves. We were taught not to feel good about ourselves. And in the power column, we look at how you've suffered in a way that identifies it very, very clearly, so much so that you'll have self-empathy for the first time. And when that happens, that starts to change the mindset dramatically. My way of living is very different. So the process is recognize this is a level 3 doubt, which you're doing. Nice job. And now come do some power column work. Now, let me say a couple things about how you can do some of these things, because a lot of times people need help from me directly about this. On my website, www.crushingdoubt.com, there's certain resources that you can use. The book's going to be up there as soon as it's ready in 2 weeks. So that will be another resource for many of you, including one that's cost effective if people can't afford to work directly with me. But in working directly with me, there's kind of 2 ways to do it. One, my teaching seminars, they're not exactly directly with me because they're recordings of me, but they are a way that organizes all of mind-body experience and explains, why does one person do this and one group do this and one set of practitioners do this? How does it all make sense together? You have too much information and not enough information all at the same time. And this seminar organizes all of that information to explain why everything happens. It's designed to bring down doubt. It is an attack on doubt, and it does all of that. Then it explains my system and the columns in greater detail, and that gets you ready to do whatever work you're going to do. Now, if you want to work directly with me, I knew that I needed to set up something where people could access that each and every week. And so you can work with me once, twice, or 3 times a week in my groups. The groups are somewhat similar to the Q&A in that there's a lot of question and answers, but they're very different in some other ways. One is it's a private Zoom call. It's not recorded. And we get so much further in each part of the process. Each one of you that I've answered questions for, we would have multiple questions being answered back and forth. I would be able to gather much more information in a short period of time about what's happening and make an even better recommendation. It would just be a much more honed experience. So we get a lot further in the groups. In addition, it's an incredibly supportive, fantastic group of people. And so people get a lot of support from that. But thirdly, just knowing that you're going to be able to interact with me that regularly about these things is a great bolster against doubt. And it's a great way to feel like I can make sense of this. So that's a place where we can do all of that. There is also a power column group. So Sarah, let's say that you had your doubt down pretty well, but you can't feel like you can change your relationship with you. The power column group, which I call the power column high speed. It's like high speed therapy. It's so targeted that it gets results much more quickly. The power column group is on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. The main groups are on Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to know more about it, email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. Okay, so the process, though, Sarah, in that power column is recognize level 3 doubt, move over to the power column, do what I call your core narrative. That's where you tell yourself the story of your core suffering self to learn to understand what you've been through. And when you see it that clearly, it changes how you're going to live your life. It's pretty radical. And then you can start living in power. And that's how you change that mindset. There's more specifics to it, of course, but let's see what you think of that. Okay. Darlene said, I got a new bed a week ago. Some symptoms left, restless legs. Yay. But now upper back aches midday. New bed softer. Is this structural, mind, body, or adjustment? And then she said, I miss group support. Hopefully I will be able to rejoin soon. Darlene, we would love to have you back. I personally, of course, would also love to have you back. And it's because there's such joy in helping each one of you. So I want to help you all. And I'm here to help every single one of you. So Darlene, hopefully we will see you soon. But this is mind body. And actually the way you laid it out shows us why. I got a new bed and some symptoms left because you started to believe that they would help with those symptoms. But now upper back aches midday, new bed softer. You're showing us that your belief system is dictating what's happening. The fact is you could sleep anywhere and not have these symptoms if your belief system was in the right place. And right place, I don't mean that judgmentally. I mean it encouragingly. If we address what's happening in these columns for each one of you, you'll get to a place where it's not going to matter what you do. I often say it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what you're thinking while you do it. Well, you're lying down on a bed and you're thinking this new bed is softer and it's making for a different kind of symptom. You got to remember, from an evolutionary standpoint, cavemen slept on rocks or wherever. They didn't, it's very unlikely they had back pain or other things like it. And I'll tell you why, because they would have been killed by a predator. It's just evolutionarily, it doesn't make sense that we are this fragile, but we get this message over and over from society. So that is a mind-body experience. Then Darlene added, being close to the California fires, and I'm so sorry about that. Very, very tragic and upsetting for so many. Being close to the California fires, I was glued to news, but felt like I needed to be informed. Symptoms escalated. How do I monitor real threats without symptoms going way up? This is a great question. Here's my initial answer, but as always, let's do follow-up. And it doesn't have to be just Darlene following up. If you guys have questions about what I say, follow up. Okay. So one way that I like to help myself with this kind of thing is to separate out what are the threats in the world versus what are the threats to me personally. And I don't mean that in a selfish sense, where I could say to myself, well, as long as I'm fine, it's no big deal. That's not what I mean. What I mean, though, is that our central nervous system should mostly get elevated when we're having an experience that's dangerous to us or bad for us. And Darlene, these experiences they're bad for all of us from a societal standpoint, in that it hurts, it's scary, we worry about people. And that matters, and that's important. But we also get worried about, oh my God, can I handle being informed about these scary things? If you felt less scared of your own body from the symptoms, and the columns work will help you do that, then you'd feel like, I can pay attention to these things without it becoming a problem. I know I can handle it. So this is a doubt about the self and being able to handle it, another level 3 doubt. And so how do I monitor real threats without symptoms going way up? I would focus on the fact that your empathy for the other people and your care of what happens is important, but it's separate from whether you can handle these things. I think the doubt that you can handle it is the reason the symptoms go up. The doubt scares you. Darlene, let me know if that makes sense. Okay. Susan. In the group, I told you about reading Dr. Sarno's book again, and he said he didn't see spondylolisthesis being painful, but he couldn't rule out that it might be. Okay, so Susan, I actually don't remember that. I'm not saying it didn't happen in what he wrote, but I wonder if you could find where in the book it says that, because I don't remember anything like that. So something I'll have to check out, because I don't recall Sarno ever saying something like that. Not saying you're not telling the truth about it, but sometimes people read something and they read it a certain way. And when the reality is it's not that. That said, even if he did say that, it has been ruled out all over the place in medical journals. Spondylolisthesis does not cause pain. And I don't know what it means anyway, that he couldn't rule out that it might be. What does that even mean? So I guess we'd have to think about that. I want to hear the actual quote though. See if you can find it. When I have burning in my legs and feet and pain in my lower back, I wonder if it is from spondylolisthesis and pinched nerves. This sounds crazy to me, but doubt has me worried. Okay. Well, first of all, I love the idea that you're hearing the doubt and thinking, that sounds crazy. You know what? The first step in getting rid of a doubt is to observe it, to call it into question. And you're doing that. Here's the thing. You know that your symptoms are not behaving like somebody who has a structural issue. They often leave during the day and come back at night. Where did that spondylolisthesis go during the day? That doesn't make sense. I'm often shocked as I really look at it and think about it and how obvious it actually is that almost everything is mind-body experience. That's the only thing that makes sense of these things that come and go, and they go up and down, and these syndromes come out of nowhere, and suddenly everybody's having this. The only thing that makes sense of it is mind-body symptoms. Think of carpal tunnel syndrome. Where was that when people were using typewriters? They didn't have that, but then they used computers. Exact same motion, maybe slightly different positioning, but come on. Are we seriously thinking we're that evolutionarily weak? Not a chance. So, Susan, here's my question to you. Did I answer that to your full satisfaction? That's what we need to know. Okay, let's see. Russell Crane's music, another follow-up. Also, I know that only blunt traumas outside of our own bodies can cause damage, collisions. Bingo. Absolutely. Other than that, everything else is mind-body. Thank you for that reminder for everybody, Russell. Rita, good to see you here. Thanks for the emojis. Good to see you. All right. Let's see. Amir, how about self-esteem and reassurance? So I might need to know a bit more about the specific question, Amir, but I'll take a stab at it. So, self-esteem and reassurance, when it comes to mind-body experience or just the experience in general of where your self-esteem is at and reassurance, generally speaking, a lot of people who have lower self-esteem didn't get good messages. They do need reassurance. However, if it comes to the point where we're trying to get reassurance because we have low self-esteem and we can't believe in ourselves, ultimately we'll have to address that also. But the goal here, well, at least part of the goal of all of this, is to reduce symptoms, but also be living a better life. And in the power column, which is where self-esteem would be addressed primarily, we would learn to recognize, why haven't you felt good? And what's the story that is not fair to you about why that happened? And that would actually bring down the need for reassurance. At the same time, I'm happy to reassure you all on that journey because it supports you, especially if we're headed towards getting your self-esteem in a good place. Okay. Sarah Kelly Burke says, also, I have a conditioned response to sitting and haven't managed to get rid of it. Why? Sarah, that's a doubt issue. When you're having an expectation that something's going to go a certain way, it tends to go that way. And so if you believe that sitting is going to cause a problem, it is likely to play out in that way. However, good news, if you start to even just challenge that, even just in your mind, you can start to make progress towards eventually sitting totally normally. I used to worry about sitting when I had back pain. Now I don't worry about sitting at all. I don't even think about it. I can sit wherever I want. That's not a problem because I don't have any beliefs that makes any difference. Now, that's me though. So I'm in a good spot with that. But Sarah, for you, you're not yet. And I don't mean that critically or as bad news. It's just identifying a problem. You have doubts about it. The next thing I would do is get that articulated. Let's get it put into words. Actually, first you're going to need to call it into question, which is observing. In the doubt column, we observe, articulate, and counter. Observing it, let's call it into question. Articulating, let's put it into words. Countering, you may need help with me from that, or from me with that, but I can give you science and logic that shows you why sitting is not going to be a problem. So one of the questions I have is, you say I have a conditioned response to sitting and I haven't managed to get rid of it. One question I have to you is, do you believe that sitting would cause pain or symptoms? Or do you believe it shouldn't, but it's still there? You have an expectation. Either way, the reason it's persisting is because of expectation, which is a thought process, and that's the doubt column. Okay. Catherine Toomer. Hi, Dr. Dan. So good to be in touch again. Today I had a depressive episode with lots of crying, a real uptick. On first look, it seems like it's about seeing my new eating restrictions that have happened due to cholesterol/coronary calcium score, etc., as lifelong. They are lifelong, but I became overwhelmed with them and was thrown back to my huge self-imposed restrictions from my anorexic days years ago. I'm sorry about that, Catherine. Memories and thoughts and feelings from that time hit me hard. Maybe a bit of re-traumatizing, but it is typical of me to make lots of problems be food/eating problems. So, should I be looking deeper for what's up? Thanks for all. Okay. The first thing, Catherine, I think people who know me well know that one of the things that I do is I'm a little bit of a stickler for words, because words determine our meanings. They determine our moods. They determine where we are, especially with doubt. You said today I had a depressive episode. I would encourage you to think, today I got sad. It's different. And the reason I think it's different is a depressive episode feels like it's connected to some kind of illness or difficulty or disorder, when really you just are dealing with something. You had to adjust your life to this cholesterol, coronary calcium score, which I'm going to say something about in a second, and feeling something's lifelong, and suddenly you were thrown back into something. So you got upset. And I mean this as good news, Catherine, to think about it. I'm not criticizing you for saying it at all, but I want to help you with that. Try not to think about it as a depressive episode, because that strengthens it. That gives doubt lots of fuel to think, oh my God, I'm in real trouble now. What really happened is you had to make an adjustment to your eating, and it threw you back to some very difficult times and made you sad and worried. And I get it. So should I be looking deeper for what's up? In a way, no, because we don't want to think about this as necessarily that big of a deal. This is an onset or an uptick of sadness. And we can just look at trying to understand it. So it doesn't necessarily need us to look that deeply into things. However, should I be looking deeper for what's up? I would, as long as you can think about it from the vantage point that you are going to be able to process things better than ever before, then yeah, let's look deeper. What did those anorexic days actually mean? What did those memories bring back? What were the thoughts and feelings? And how can we change that? Now, that would be power column work, Catherine, where we look at how you've suffered and we shift it. Now, you said maybe a bit of re-traumatizing. I do think this was a trauma activation. But I think if we do some more power column work, we can help you to understand that. Now, again, another little plug for my groups. That's a place where you can get a lot of help from me about that. Specifically in this case, I'd say, you could work on the doubt in the groups overall, but you could also work on power in the power group. And I really wish I could just work with everybody, because these columns are incredibly helpful for me, and I want to bring them to as much of you as possible, and as much as possible to get these symptoms down. But I would say, don't obsess about getting deeper about this, but take a look at it and challenge the idea that you can't get further with it. Okay. Shelby Geyer said, I need reassurance like Russell. Everybody needs reassurance. It's one of my main functions. It's one of the reasons I do this Q&A. More reassurance. That will bring down doubt. Okay. Darlene said, cavemen slept on rocks, made me laugh out loud. My pleasure, Darlene. Glad to provide a laugh, but it's also true. It's fun. People sometimes say like, oh, we weren't meant to sit. And I'm like, really? What did cavemen do in caves? I mean, can you imagine just standing there in a cave or lying down? They probably sat. It's an instinct. Anyways, doubt that I can handle empathetically. Sent too soon. 1, I am overwhelmed by what is happening to people. Very understandable. And 2, would I survive, be able to save myself, or freeze up choose the wrong escape route. Now, let's think about this, Darlene, and I mean this as supportively and encouragingly and admiringly. You're a great person, and what I'm thinking about this is a way that doubt is taking every scrap of information and scaring the crap out of you. You're now imagining yourself into a fire zone. And we all do this over and over and over. Have you ever sat there in a totally fine situation and remembered a time when you were really angry or really scared, and suddenly you're back in it? Like, in a way, our minds are time travelers. They can go anywhere they want to go, and our bodies will follow. But the key is to stop time traveling, to stop going to places that scare us, and to say instead, no. Yes, I'm overwhelmed by what's happening to people, but I don't have to be overwhelmed because I don't have to solve it. I can just feel for them. I can do something that's of some help. I can do my part and I can feel for them, but I don't need to let it infiltrate my sense of me. That's why I was saying we can separate out the two and have a more helpful experience with the other people because we're not so overwhelmed inside. Secondly, would I survive? There's a doubt in there, Darlene, and it's a doubt that I'm familiar with from working with you. You feel that your symptoms are keeping you in a weak and dangerous position. And the doubt is saying, I'm going to stay here. I'm never going to be able to get out of this. I'm never going to be able to take care of myself. And that is all crap. And I mean, that is good news. So let's work on that doubt. Okay. And Darlene, I hope you can come back to group because I want to hammer away at this doubt with you. Okay. Shelby Geyer then said, sometimes reassurance makes me feel better and sometimes not, but never feel normal. It's wild. I understand what you're saying, but that's a form of doubt also. That's you saying, I'm not normal. I can't be normal. I'm never going to be normal. And reassurance sometimes can make you feel like, okay, that gives me some hope. But I think sometimes the reassurance feeds the idea that you're not normal, which is not true, or that you're always going to need help. So it's always about what's going to bring down the doubt in the given moment. I'll tell you what's going to help you even more than just reassurance is reassurance that is connected to meaning and to why this will work. And that's part of what the columns can provide. They can explain what's going on with your symptoms each and every moment and show you how and why you can get better. All right. Let's see. Back to some YouTube questions. Hillel, follow-up. But we did agree that my situation and that of others is that symptoms popping up all over are emotionally driven, and doubt is sitting on top of that. So even when I do the level 2 doubt work, the emotional source, fibromyalgia, is a diagnosis that was kind of thrown around here. Not by me, but don't worry about the diagnosis too much, Hillel. I'll help you with that. Keeps bringing them up again and again. Does that mean the work also needs to be emotional? If so, how? So the way I like to think about this is the doubt is playing with you again around a certain issue, but you're doing a great job. You're recognizing that you need this question answered, so you're asking the question. And there are 4 forms of doubt. There is fear, confusion, lack of certainty, and questions. Questions are the best form of doubt. They're the most workable, and Hillel's bringing that. So the way that I think about this is you each have 3 columns, and those columns are always active. So try not to think about it as, oh my God, does the work need to be in this column, or this column? The work needs to be in the columns. So if you're having symptoms that are bouncing all around, there could be an emotional component that makes them bounce all around, but the fact that they're at all and always there or repetitively there is doubt. So you can have all 3 columns working at once. It also could be that the symptoms are bouncing around to try to get your attention, to get you to receive a communication. All 3 columns, all at the same time. But that's not bad news, and that doesn't have to be overwhelming, Hillel. What we need to know is what to do in each column and when to focus on which column most. Right now, we're focusing on the doubt column because you've got a question and you're not sure. So we would bring down the doubt enough to then do the emotional work. Hillel, let me know if that made sense. Scotty Styles, thank you for joining us here and saying hello and sending these beautiful emojis. I appreciate it. Journeys, thank you for joining us here as well. All right. Darlene said, I do drop myself into newsworthy situations all the time. Hearing you say that was a light bulb moment. Thank you so much, Dan. It is my pleasure, Darlene. Don't time travel. If you're going to time travel, go to good places. Listen, just because bad things are happening and you empathize, doesn't mean you need to go deeper into it. I'm not saying that unempathically, but there's only so much we can do, and you do have to live a life of your own. And the better off you are, the more able you are to help other people anyway. So let's get you to a good place, then help. It's kind of like when you're on an airplane and those masks are thankfully I haven't seen those drop in real life, but if they do, it's because you've got to put the oxygen mask on and you've got to put yourself on first. Otherwise, you can't help people. This is a similar type of thing. Help yourself first, then think about those other people and what you can do about it. Okay? Beatrice, good to see you here. Realizing my good intuition about my body no longer exists, and my long-standing routines of exercise are no longer possible because they required better fitness all along. Since I haven't moved much since last spring. How to move through anger about this when actually planning my baby step attempts to exercise or even look at the gym and the pool. I guess for me, all doubt, different levels, but taking action are a big leap. Okay, let's jump back to the original question. Realizing my good intuition about my body no longer exists. This will not surprise you, Beatrice. Your primary work is in the doubt column. This is a doubt that is raging. And it's saying, you can't trust your intuition about your body anymore, Beatrice. Look what happened. It's as if you're having this mind-body symptom and you're feeling just, I understand, absolutely rocked by it. But on top of feeling rocked by the symptom and worried about whether it'll go away, you are feeling that you can't trust your own mind about your body. And I want to encourage you about something. Part of the work that you and I are doing is to bring down the doubt so that you can actually see that's not true. It's not that you can't trust your body or your mind. It's that you're not linking up what's happening in your body and mind together to be able to see how it makes sense. If it did make sense to you, then you'd know you can trust it again. And I'm not saying that's easy to do, but I want you to be working towards that. So that good intuition is still there, and the long-standing routines can eventually be brought back. But you're saying you haven't moved since last spring. You do need to take some baby steps. How to move through the anger about this. First thing is I want you to get angry about the right thing first. I want you to get angry about the trauma, the emotional trauma that made this feel so hard for you, that made these things spike. And what I think you're saying is it's hard to take those baby steps towards getting better, in part because you're so angry about it, and I understand why. And I think you're feeling afraid of it and all that stuff, and that keeps you from doing it. What I want you to recognize, and this is going to take a little bit more time, especially because we need to bring down doubt. But once doubt's down enough, I just wanted to give you a sense of where we're headed on the road, is that you're going to get to a place where you realize these symptoms were actually also trying to communicate something to you. That this is power column stuff. You can't get to power column stuff all that much until doubt is down fairly significantly. But once it is, you're going to actually find out that you were very upset about something legitimate that you've been upset about your whole life. And your symptoms want you to know about it. So the anger and the worry and all that stuff is preventing you from making the progress that's ultimately going to get there. Now, Beatrice, as always, doesn't matter what I think, it matters what you think. I need to hear what you think about that. I am George White. The speaker has joined us here. George, it is good to see you, my friend. It's been a long time. We'd love to catch up sometime soon. George White is a motivational speaker, and he's very motivational, I'll tell you that. Really, really cool stuff. And George, I would love to connect. Let's talk offline or here if you want to bring up something. Okay, Susan Gale Paint, thanks for joining us here as well. George, keep me posted on how things are going. Hope all is well with you. All right. Kasim said, I've tried using logic and science, and doubt increases the symptoms, which sucks. Sure does. Especially while I'm driving. I'm connecting fear emotion to childhood around this symptom, but no change. Let's see. During my last trauma activation where I told doubt, don't believe anything I say, Now I wonder if that gave doubt a tanker truck of fuel to kick my butt. I didn't mean to laugh, Kasim. It's just you have a good sense of humor and you're having some sense of humor even in this. And what I want to say is, I understand where you're coming from. We've all been here. But the thing that I want you to think about is when doubt is raging like this and you try to use logic and science and it doesn't work, what we're really talking about is level 3 doubt. You yourself don't think you can master this. And that's a power column issue. So what I want you to do instead, because you've tried working on doubt and you've tried working on emotions, is use the power column now. Recognize how whatever's happening right now is actually going to connect to your broader emotional picture. The emotions and power columns are both emotional columns. The emotions column is designed to get you awareness of the emotions, and the power column is designed to get you to make adjustments in your life so that you are living more in alignment with yourself. This is actually an alignment issue, Kasim. And I mean that as good news, because what it means is there's a place for you to go. There's a place for you to do the work. And this level 3 doubt will come down as you come to feel stronger about yourself. By the way, notice, this is on the heels of something you mentioned in group. I hope you don't mind my saying, I'm not divulging any big piece of information because what happens in group stays in group unless you decide to bring it out. But you were just taking a step forward in your life socially. And then you got hit with some things. And I think that raised your overall level doubt about you, that activated power column stuff that made you start to feel bad about you. And boom, doubt came into that void. So if I can keep showing you guys how these columns work and why, and it keeps making sense to you, then I'm doing my job, and then the doubt will come down. So doubt is trying to convince you, oh, this isn't working. Doubt work isn't working, and emotions column stuff isn't working. Guess what? It's because it's power column. And I'm always going to have an answer for these things because these things really do actually make sense. You make sense and your symptoms make sense. That's the overarching aspect of the work we always need to think about to be able to figure this out. Practically Positive Coaching, thank you for joining us here. Love that name. And would love to connect if we haven't already. Actually, I'm losing track of who I've connected with at this point. Okay. Shelby Geyer says, suggestions on what to do if we can't afford anything and need one-on-one. Probably not, but asking anyways. So actually, I have trained, read too many books, heard too much, too many suggestions, breathing, meditation, journaling, etc. A lot of times you've had too much information and not enough information at once. And I get that, Shelby, and you're right. I want you to shrink the circle of trust. Figure out where you're going to trust things. Right now, you're talking to me. It seems like you are interested in what I have to say, hopefully trusting what I'm saying. Hopefully what I'm saying is helpful. But the first thing is, I understand being tired of the books. At the same time, I don't mean this to sound self-serving. It's not that. It's that I wrote my book on purpose, in part, to address exactly what you're saying. My book is meant to get you to stop having to read the other books because it takes all the good stuff from the other books. I don't mean takes the ideas, but it shows why these ideas apply in a particular way so that you can just put it to rest. Why does breathing work sometimes? Why does meditation work sometimes? Why does journaling work sometimes? Why does ignoring the symptoms work sometimes? Why does thinking emotionally work sometimes? Why does somatic tracking work sometimes? I can tell you why they all work. So if you do have to read one more book, Shelby, read mine. It's going to explain this. And it's very cost effective because it's a book. But the next step is, if you can't afford anything but you need one-on-one, I've actually trained a lot of people in my system, and some of them work for lower fee. So that is one idea. Another idea is you can come to see me or any of the practitioners that I've trained, and one of the advantages of the column system is they're meant to work very quickly. They're meant to identify what the problem is and move very fast towards the solution so that you don't have to pay somebody for therapy for 2 years. It's not supposed to work that way. It would be better if we could get you all the information you need in like 4 sessions and help you feel on your way. And then, to me, the groups are where you could go to have ongoing support. MindBody Integrated, thanks for joining us here. Very good to see you. Shelby, I hope that is a helpful answer, but the key is the information. You say we need one-on-one, and I'm not saying that you wouldn't benefit from it or that you don't prefer that. But I hear doubt in that. I hear doubt saying, you're not going to get any help unless you get one-on-one, but you can't afford it. Doubt's locking you in to a bad argument that's going to make you feel like you can't get better, and you actually can. Darlene said the number one best thing about groups is Dan's knowledge and personal reassurance. Thank you, Darlene. I appreciate it. It's a huge part of the group. It is educational. It is trying to teach people about this system and their symptoms and how to make that work. Okay, we got to go into like a speed round here because we are running low on time, but it looks like I've gotten through most of them. Beatrice said, I guess for me, all doubt, different levels, but thinking to take action are a big leap. I agree. That is a big step. And what that shows, Beatrice, is you're starting to bring down the doubt enough, or at least you're just getting sick of the symptoms enough that you're ready to take some action. The way that this system works is bring down doubt, learn about emotions, and head into power. Beatrice, believe it or not, your doubt is down from where it was. Is it still high? Yes, it is. I'm not saying it's not, but it's coming down. And so the process is working. If I can keep describing what this process is and what you need to do, if it makes sense to you, then we're in good shape. If it doesn't make sense to you, you got to follow up with questions. Dorisa says, thanks, Dan. Some great questions and really fantastic answers. Thank you, Dorisa. I appreciate it. I do hope people are getting fantastic answers. There's been fantastic questions throughout. Every single one of these questions is not only useful to the person who asked them, but to everybody who watches this and everybody who's here. My design is to have all of these questions be useful to you. Okay, Susan said, your answer was helpful and makes a lot of sense. I'm going to email the page in Sarno's book to you, and I think you'll show me how this is doubt. It absolutely is, because Sarno never meant to inspire doubt. He wouldn't want that. Okay, Beatrice said, another question about Cindy. I must be missing something. Let's see. Oh, swelling. Sorry, swelling in the ankle and burning in the forefoot on the same nerve pathway. Outside of the ankle, where the original chronic tendon issue continues to swell after weight bearing, and then sometimes more burning on that nerve pathway, makes me doubt that the feet are mind-body syndrome. That's another way of referring to these mind-body symptoms. Now, let me see. Beatrice then said, yes, makes sense about anger. Anger at how I got into this mess of now all over sensations and tightness. So I can try to swim, also need reassurance. We can definitely get you there, and we can get you there very, very soon, Beatrice. But this is the thing I want to work on, is what you're talking about right here. Right here. Okay. Is you're talking about what I call a doubt trigger. When you take a certain action and it leads to a symptom, naturally your mind is going to think, well, the one leads to the other. But here's the good news. That's not actually true. Doing the thing and the beliefs that come from doing that thing is what leads to the symptom. That's a very different thing than the action leads to the symptom. It's not true. What's happening instead is the action leads to a thought process, which gets you worried, and the doubt is what leads to the symptom. Now, you said swelling in the ankle and burning in the forefoot on the same nerve pathway. And it happening after weight bearing is part of what makes you think this is not mind body. Well, the next step is to see, what do you think about what I just said about a trigger? Triggers are very scary. You're trying things that you think are dangerous. Doubt works on the fact that you think you need protection. So if you feel you're in danger and then the symptom goes up, one way of thinking about that is your doubt has gone up. But we need to test out these ideas in your mind and get a sense of what you think is true. So what I'm saying to this, Beatrice, is nothing you're saying here runs counter to what I'm saying. And if that's the case, we need to keep talking this out until you can either articulate some way in which it doesn't fit with what I'm saying, or I can get you to see it fits so well with what I'm saying that you can have more confidence in this and then give it a try. Now, you said you're going to try swimming tomorrow and you need some reassurance. So here's the piece of reassurance I can give you. Hopefully it'll be good enough. But the reality is, I have a line that I say, which is, it can hurt, but it cannot harm. You are not in danger. And in fact, doctors have agreed on this. I think that's what you've told me. I think that's 100% right. You can't actually hurt yourself. So one thing to think about is if the symptoms go up, it would be because your doubt went up. It would not be because of anything else. It's just fear. And the good news about that is you're not going to be super afraid for your whole life, even though doubt is going to convince you right now that yes, you will be. It's not true. It is not true. This is going to make more and more sense. You're going to get relief. And in fact, you could look at it as tomorrow morning is a chance to try to push back against a doubt trigger. And let's say you do it and it's not nearly as bad as you thought. Or even if it isn't as bad as you thought. That's a gain right there. You have a chance to make a gain tomorrow. Whereas doubt is convincing you, I have a chance to get scared out of my mind or hurt. That's what doubt argues. Power argues the opposite. And working against doubt argues the opposite. You have a chance to prove that you're actually okay. Now, we're way over time tonight. I'm going to take one last comment and we'll wrap up here. Shelby Geyer says, doubt has me locked in absolutely. It is depressing and your group does sound amazing. I only trust 2 people and one of them is you. It's a great honor, Shelby, though I hate that you currently only trust 2. We can get you to more eventually. Thanks for everything. Shelby, I would love to have you in group. And I want to encourage everybody out there, if you're considering group, sometimes people think of these groups as, okay, I'm not really going to get that much time with you. That's not true. You might not get as much time one-on-one with only your specific idea, but the whole idea of group is I keep relating it back to the whole column system again and again and again, so that every second of that group is useful to you. And they're cost effective. When I think of, I'm not saying it just to toot my own horn, but I'm really happy with how this turned out because I wished that I had something like this. They're cost effective, and yet the columns are so good. And I'm not, again, not saying that to brag. They just describe people really well. And I've been very pleased with how they work out. So these groups are a chance to get even better than you tend to get from any one-on-one experience. Sometimes even better than with me one-on-one, because they're a chance for you to learn from other people in this very supportive group. HBen4, thank you for joining us here. Unfortunately, we're just wrapping up now, but I do want to encourage you to come back next week to this Q&A, or you can watch this Q&A on Instagram or on YouTube or on Facebook for that matter. And you can watch it all the way through. There's lots of great questions. Hopefully, people found that there were great answers. And it has been a pleasure. As a reminder, I will be here next week for the Q&A, and in 2 weeks, I will be here as well, but that's going to be for the actual book launch. Hard to believe I'm actually there. Very excited about it. Cannot wait to hear what you guys think. I have found time and again that people and their doubts, they just can't imagine how they're going to feel better or why. And then they get information and they think, oh my God, that blew the doors off things. That's part of the goal of the book. That's part of the goal of my group. That's part of the goal of this Q&A. Let's keep it rolling. Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure. I will look forward to seeing you next week. If you haven't already, I would sign up for my newsletter on www.crushingdoubt.com. I'm going to be making announcements about the book and everything else. And so tune in there. Okay, guys, looking forward to seeing you soon. Take care.